following program has been pre-recorded, so please hold your call.
Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness with your host, Janelle Elgaway.
Good evening, and welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness. I'm your host, Janelle Elgaway. Please join us on YouTube live chat at Conspiracies Against Wellness live stream. Tonight, we have guest Nita Thomas from the organization World Sickle Cell Federation. Welcome, Nita Thompson, to Conspiracies Against Wellness. How are you this evening?
Thank you. I'm well, thank you. And you?
I'm doing great, thank you. So, could you please tell me a little bit about who you are and why you started the advocacy work that you're currently involved in?
Okay, well, I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised, and I'm diagnosed with the sickle cell trait, and I have people in my family married into, and I have a lot of friends who are diagnosed with sickle cell disease. Okay. And here, there are a lot of challenges facing our people diagnosed. And here in California, we have the lowest life expectancy out of the nation. So the more and more I learned about sickle cell, got involved, I'm like, well, I got a big mouth. I don't back down. And this, I feel, is my work to do.
That's wonderful.
Because I understand pain as being a pain patient. And even if we, as pain patients, understand pain, we can never understand the true grips of sickle cell because it's more worse. It's far worse than anything that anybody would want to deal with or that can imagine. Unless you go through it, you really don't know.
Right.
So that's why I do what I do. Well, sickle cell is a blood disease or a blood disorder that people are born with. Either the parent has the trait or the disease. So both parents can have the trait, and there's a 1/4 chance that each child they have could have the disease. If one has the disease and the other has the trait, it's 50% chance that each of their children would have this crazy disease. So you're born with it, and what it does is at any time in the person's life, they're always having some of the red blood cells which carry the oxygen to every part of the body where needed, and every body part is needed for oxygen. It can mutate. It can become deformed. It can look like a crescent moon, an amoeba. It just is a deformed shape. Once the oxygen goes out of it, it gets sticky and hard. So what happens is, just like driving on an expressway or a highway during rush hour traffic, there's an accident ahead, and not even the emergency vehicles can go on the outsides to get to that accident and pass it. That's what happens in the bloodstream of those diagnosed, so it blocks it. And when it blocks the flow of the blood, it blocks the flow of the oxygen. That kills that area in the body for the remainder of that person's life. Now, when it can go into the hip or the shoulder, repeated crisis in those areas where the blood is blocked, so there's no oxygen, it kills that area. It causes a lot of pain, and those people then have to get a hip replacement or shoulder replacement. It can turn into what they call is blood clots many of them get blood clots because they still can flow through. But when it blocks the flow of blood in the brain, it can cause a stroke. Behind the eyes, it can cause a person to go partially or fully blind. Now, the thing about sickle cell trait is it was formed globally to combat people from dying out who were exposed to malaria. So sickle cell disease or disorder is the second mutation that the body created to fight malaria. But when it did it to these people, it changed the DNA from glutamine to valine. And this one little mutation in the DNA is what causes this dynamic disorder.
Why?
But it's in every race.
Okay, yeah, I was going to
because globally, that's where malaria is, right?
Right. When did sickle cell, when was it introduced to the United States?
That's a really impacting story. So around 1906, there was this man who came from Grenada, Mr. Noel, and he got off of the boat with leg ulcers, and he went to Chicago, so you can imagine the different climate from Grenada or to the tropical islands to Chicago with cold and windy and snow compared to the sun. Right. So again, the tropical islands are where it mutates. Came to Chicago, had a sickle cell crisis. So because he went to Chicago for dental school, he was rich, and his father sent him to dental school out here in the Americas, that he started having challenges. So one of the interns just started looking at his blood, and then he told the doctor, Dr. Hedrick, who is identified as the person who wrote the first Western journal entry for the doctors about sickle cell. So it took him from 1906 to 1910. He followed Mr. Noel all the way, and that's when they first recognized it in America. Now, here's the insulting thing, to be honest about it. During the time of slavery and before, nobody was interested in sickle cell. But the slave masters were like, well, what's going on with my property? Why is my property dying in the fields? Why has my property got all of this pain? What's going on? They didn't consider or call in the doctors, but it was recorded that a runaway slave they looked at his body and they dissected him, and they saw that his spleen was gone. It was really shriveled up. That's one thing that also happens to people diagnosed with sickle cell. So that's why they will need a lot of antibiotics, because the spleen is what cleans the blood. The spleen also is the reason that if you don't have one, you have a lower life expectancy.
Okay. What are the symptoms of sickle cell?
Okay, besides the pain, it depends on the form of sickle cell, but it's said, because they're over, the books here say they're over 400 types of sickle cell, but actually one of our persons diagnosed, and they call themselves warriors because they're constantly fighting. They're constantly fighting themselves, they're fighting the doctors, the teachers, sometimes their parents. They're just fighting to live. But it can be anything from this pain crisis to being born smaller. So they're smaller. You have preemie babies, and they stay smaller, those diagnosed with SS hemoglobin. So they're more petite, men and women. They develop slower. As babies, they can often get infections. They can get earaches. Many times they'll get pneumonia. Their hands and feet can swell up. So that's why globally, especially in Nigeria, many of the babies die before they're 5 years old. In the United States, the same thing can happen. Many of the babies die from infection. That's why over the years, they decided that if they put the babies on penicillin or another antibiotic, it would help them live longer. So the goal here in America, at least as a child, is to help them live longer. Then when they become adult, it turns. But some of the other challenges are, they get dehydrated. And if they get dehydrated, which goes for anybody who can get dehydrated, what happens is the blood gets thicker. So if you think about motor oil and you drive a car, and when you first put the oil in, it's all pretty and this blondish, yellowish color. But by the time you go a while, you open up the car and you pull the dipstick and it's like black and thick. Well, that's what can happen to the blood when you get dehydrated. And when that happens, then the blood moves a lot slower through the veins, plus they've got sickle cell. So that can also add to it. Anything, though, any complication, heart attack, stroke, just pain anywhere, any organ can be damaged. Okay. And therefore, a lot of people have to get their gallbladder removed. They have gallstones. Some of the medication also can account for some of the medical challenges they experience. But, I mean, it's all over the map. The thing about it, though, is sickle cell is so tricky. Some people don't even realize they're diagnosed with it. They don't have the symptoms. Like you can't compare, because one person may be in the hospital every week for a valid reason. Right. And some people, they just discount it as growing pains or arthritis when they get older. And others don't find out they're diagnosed until autopsy.
Is there a test that you can get to see if you have sickle cell?
Yes. So here's the test. The first test was the sickle cell dex test, and that was done back in the time of the early through mid 1970s. The time that the Black Panthers actually advocated so strongly for sickle cell that they got a test going. But that test could only find out if you did one or three things. And it was like cut down the middle. Either you had sickle cell disease or sickle cell trait, or you had nothing. And that's all it could tell. But at that time, some people, the healthcare professionals, decided to go a little further, and they actually lied to people. They told somebody, you have the trait, you have the disease. And they could not tell. All they could say is you have one of the two, but they didn't say that. That's why there's some people walking around diagnosed with sickle cell now, and they don't even know it. They discount it because they remember they were told that they didn't have it, when actually they do. So today's test is the electrophoresis test, and that can tell if you have sickle cell disease or trait. But there are other tests even, because thalassemia is a type of sickle cell. It's under the sickle cell umbrella. You can have sickle thalassemia. You can have elliptocytosis, sickle elliptocytosis. So there are all sorts of blood diseases that, if put together, the two traits, it forms a type of sickle cell disease. So if you think you have this type of pain, or you really want to, you have to go and ask the doctor to test you. And then if it's something you still think you have problems, and they say you don't have sickle cell, you ask them to test you for something else. Now, newborn screening has been in effect since the early 1990s. And through different states at different times, they finally agreed to test all babies for sickle cell trait or disease. But still, they may miss thalassemia. So at the newborn screening, the parents are told that your baby has such and so. So then you have to go to genetic counseling. But again, there's some people that come from other countries, and they were never diagnosed because they didn't have newborn screening, or they never have symptoms. Sometimes the symptoms can come at, say, 47 or 35 when you decide to get pregnant. And during that time, the stress on the body is so severe until they're like, what's happening to me? And it's sickle cell, or a form of sickle cell.
Is there a reason that there's an onset, or why it doesn't why you don't start having symptoms for a period of time and then suddenly you do?
Actually, they don't know why. Okay. But I can say that I honestly believe it's a combination of several factors. It may be the type of sickle cell that a person is diagnosed with. how much stress they have or how they handle the stress in either daily school, conversing with people, teachers, books, tests, all of it. How they eat, perhaps, if they stay hydrated or not. It can be many, many different factors, and there's no rhyme or reason as of being explained purely today.
Does health insurance cover these tests to get tested for it?
Well, here's the thing about that. Before the Affordable Care Act, or quote-unquote Obamacare, some insurances would deny the the babies born, because they were born with a pre-existing condition. Yes. Yeah, they're born with it, so they want to deny you. And it was crazy that some parents had to get what they call CCS in California, but again, that's only in California, and I don't know how it is in all other states. But we had children's, it's a type of children's services insurance for children that are born with pre-existing conditions. And then as far as adults, is GHPP, and that's General Genetic Handicapped Persons Program.
Okay.
So, there are those type of programs. The thing about that's for health insurance. When you talk about burial insurance, that's a whole other thing. Because it's a pre-existing and the type of disease, some insurances won't cover you, or you get very little.
Okay.
So, all over, it's like these people are really put into a blind-sided issue, the parents and the patient.
Okay. What are the current labels or myths about sickle cell?
Oh, there are quite a few. The first one being you have to be black to have sickle cell. That's the most ignorant thing I've ever heard of, but some of the healthcare professionals still think that. And that's because in school, it was taught, basically, at first, like I say, in the 70s and the 60s, that it was a black disease. Later on, they learned that other races were also diagnosed with sickle cell. So that's one. It's, again, anybody can be diagnosed with sickle cell disease. First of all, if you just want to say, just think about if it was a black disease, okay, well, let's go with that for a minute, although we all know it's wrong. Right. But through slave trade, people went to different countries. The slave masters, some of them were Italian. They had white skin, but actually they were Italian. And they had thalassemia. So when you have sex with your slave that's diagnosed with sickle cell, or that has sickle cell trait, and you have thalassemia, then it's sickle cell. So it goes on down the line. Indentured servants from Italy went to Mexico, South America, and Central America as indentured servants again. So they fell in love with the indigenous people, had children, they had thalassemia again, and then they had another type of sickle cell in Central South America. So therefore, it's like that. So, but the truth is, it's all over. People travel, people fall in love, people are raped, people are whatever. They have sex and have babies.
Right.
And when they do, and the child is born with sickle cell, it makes the parents a special need parents to take care of this child for the rest of their lives. But really, it just is what it is. And we just have to deal with it and not shun. Now, the other thing is, see, the thing about sickle cell is, basically, as an adult, the last thing people want to do is go to the hospital. Reason why? They're treated so bad, and they're classified as these two things, and people snicker about it, but it's the most degrading thing of all, and it shows the ignorance of the medical field and people in general, the heartlessness. So, a person that comes in the hospital often because their pain was not managed in the first place, or their pain led to something else being an issue, they call them frequent flyers. So that's one of the myths. Oh, they're always in the hospital. They're a frequent flyer. They're coming in here to get drugs again. That's not the truth.
Right.
Most likely what happened was they were in for a while and they were given such a low dose of medicine till it didn't stop the pain. And they're like, okay, I'm tired of being called names. I'm tired of being treated a certain way. I'm tired of the doctors not listening to me. Okay, just let me out of here. They go home and the pain gets worse. Okay. They also want to call them hospital hoppers. Ha, ha, ha. They're hospital hoppers. Now we got this computer. We can see what hospital you've been in. Ha, ha, ha. How about they went to the hospital and the people refused to do anything? They refused to treat them. So therefore, they go to another hospital. Gotcha. It's not that they just want to jump from hospital to hospital. Who wants to do that when you're in excruciating pain? Right. They're forced to do that out of ignorance of medical professionals or about the ones that are hysterical over this. I'm not going to give you any opioids because there's such a, I'm not going to lose my license to give you opioids. Mm-hmm. And that is false and wrong as well. The CDC told them to give, and I'm talking about them, the doctors and the nurses, right, to give these patients all of the medicine that they need. Give them enough to stop the pain and then taper down or titrate down. But instead, they refuse. Yeah. Or they say they're going to give IV meds, and they say give them IV meds. Well, they say, we're only going to give you a few pills. Pills take a long time to work, and they do not conquer the excruciating pain. The pain is like, say you slam your finger in a door. Mm-hmm. And if you can imagine, that has to hurt. Just think about having that throbbing pain all over your body and it lasting 2 weeks or more. Wow. That's the type of pain a person diagnosed with sickle cell goes through. And when they stay in the hospital longer, they're at risk for getting other things happening to their bodies, like getting pneumonia, because when you are in pain, you don't breathe deeply, especially if it's in your chest or your upper part of your torso. You want to breathe shallow because it hurts to breathe. If you don't breathe right, you come down with pneumonia on top of having sickle cell crisis. Right.
Well, and if you think about it, too, in the ER, there's so many people there with so many different things, and your immune system's probably already not that good. So just being there alone, being really sick, I would imagine you'd have to be open to a lot more things. Is that right?
You're right. And the fact that out of ignorance or hate or disbelief or whatever, I can't believe our people in the hospital waiting room. Yeah. Sometimes until they die. Well, or, wait a minute, let me tell you one other thing, what they do. Some of the hospitals, the doctors say, oh, you're not really sick. Get out of here. We're dismissing you. They call security and they call the police on our people. Oh, and they're forced out or they're taken to jail and then they die. So, and then the doctors turn around and say, well, they were diagnosed with sickle cell, so they weren't expected to live long anyway. Right. And they're fine with it.
And that's another myth, too, isn't it? You can actually live if you have sickle cell, but is it because that they're being treated so poorly and incorrectly? Is that why the numbers are so high of why the death rate and the turnover having sickle cell?
You're right. They're again, it's the type of sickle cell that you have. Okay. It's the pain that you're in and what type of pain it is. But we have people that are living into their 90s, until their 80s. Mm. I, in fact, know I know of 3 siblings. I met the oldest one who is 81 years old. I mean, he's a blast. He is so funny. But him and his 2 siblings have sickle cell. One of his siblings, brother, is also out here in California area, and his sibling is back in Pennsylvania. But recently, this man went to the hospital because he was having leg pain. He went to the hospital at 81 years old, and the family didn't read the discharge paper until they got home. But it said, he's here just for pain meds. He just wants to get high. Mm-hmm. And the pain, and he said, I'm not going back because I'm not going to be stressed out or deal with this. But his daughter went back and told them off and got the doctor exposed for just generalizing and not treating him effectively. That, with all the disrespect, at 81 years old, now all of a sudden you go get disrespected, it continues. But yes, one of the myths is that you can't live long. You can live long, but the thing is, I want people to live their best life while living long.
Right.
I don't want people to suffer.
Right. Exactly.
Yes, it is about the quality of life. But most people refuse to go to the doctor until they absolutely have to. And that also adds to the death rate going low. But the life expectancy, the life expectancy out of the nation is about 48 years old for women, but it might be down to 46 now with all this opioid issue. It's about 42 to 40 for males, life expectancy nationally. But in Los Angeles, where we have the lowest, it was said to be 35 for women and 32 for men. Yet the ages of 18 through 35 are dying at alarming rates. And I, along with other people, are attempting to let people understand it is crazy out here when it comes to sickle cell. Moreover, don't not be black. Because if you're not black and you go to the hospital and say you're diagnosed with sickle cell, they're going to make you wait in the waiting room because they don't believe you. And that's wrong. I mean, it's a simple blood test they can do. They can take your blood and look and see the sickles, but they just don't want to believe out of ignorance.
Yeah.
That's the most hateful thing. And that's why we have support groups nationally, and we have to go with our Latinas or our blue-eyed, white-skinned, blonde-haired family members. Or their parents have to speak up for them. You know, you have to have an advocate to go to the hospital.
Right.
Because they'll just ignore you.
So I wanted to ask you, you've created the World Sickle Cell Federation. Can you tell me a little bit about that, why you created it, and how long you've had that?
Okay, well, it started out the idea about the other sickle cell grassroots organizations that we have, and then World Sickle Cell Day, which was approved by the United Nations in 2008. So from 2009 on, they had World Sickle Cell Day on June 19th. And that is to acknowledge that sickle cell is a global disease and to do something in your own backyard. Do something where you live to let your community know that sickle cell is still here and that people are dying from it and we need your help. So with that in mind, and I thought about all of the different sickle cell organizations that I actually work with, and that can be either locally, nationally, or globally. I'm like, well, you know, we wanted to call it maybe foundation, but it's so much more than a foundation. Then I thought about Star Trek and the Federation, and it was so cool because it was inclusive with all. And so that's why we named it World Sickle Cell, not Day, but Federation, so that we could focus on the day as well as working with and representing and having all of these organizations be a part of us, because one of the things we want to do is be the hub for teaching tools. So we have created a lot of different teaching tools to help people understand about sickle cell. So we haven't, I haven't been able to really protect them and then market them as I want to, but we have roll of the dice, and that shows how someone can be diagnosed with sickle cell. We use this, and it helps siblings understand, because people don't understand how it impacts the whole family. We have siblings hurt that their other sibling is diagnosed and that they didn't get it. You know, so we had to help them understand. We have children that blame their parents for them having sickle cell when their parents didn't even know they had a trait. Yes, yes. I mean, it's crazy. So that tool helps them understand how it's like the roll of the dice. Parents have no control.
Now, when you created the Federation, the World Sickle Cell Federation, you mentioned that it's in June 16th, and I know there's something called Juneteenth. Can you explain that a little bit and what you realized, about why you picked that time?
Okay, well, it's actually June 19th, Juneteenth.
Yes.
And what happened was, the International Sickle Cell Organization out of France, they're the ones that had been working to get World Sickle Cell Day acknowledged years prior to 2008. So they were the ones that picked Juneteenth because here in America, we celebrate June 19th when the final slaves were freed years after the Emancipation Proclamation, approximately 2.5 years after the proclamation in Texas, because those slaveholders did not want to give up, and so the army was forced to go in and force them to free the slaves. So they look at that because June 19th is a day that the African Americans, the final African Americans, were freed, and that should be really the Freedom Day for all Americans. Just not the 4th of July when we were free from the British, but to take it a step further. But so we chose that day, and from the beginning, and I have to give props to Alan Platt because he sends out an email newsletter every month. And when he had said in December, June 19th is now going to be celebrated as World Sickle Cell Day, and it came around January, and there was no chatter from no other organization or anything. So I'm like, okay, I'll pick it up. And from there, we had done things, and we were like the Paula Revere of World Sickle Cell Day. Hey, there's a World Sickle Cell Day. You know, I emailed all organizations, hematologists, nursing groups, and was telling them, hey, there's a World Sickle Cell Day. So what are you going to do? Here's some ideas. So I became the person of suggested ideas or suggestions for World Sickle Cell Day. But we found that the communities, that society was not interested. The only people who came were those in the sickle cell community. So we could come out and learn other things, but they had seminars going on and conventions going on. So it was like my spirit, I was just frustrated. And my God told me, stop tippy-toeing around Juneteenth and join them. So I called out and reached out to the first Juneteenth organization, and all I heard was crickets. Chirp, chirp, never, no contact. So the next one I called was Dr. Myers. And it was so funny because he said, hi, really? Juneteenth? Sure, you can join us. And that was the beginning of Dr. Myers and our relationship. So that's why, wow. Yeah, so we built a partnership. It was so awesome. Yeah. We've been working together now, I guess I want to say maybe for 5 years, maybe longer. But I mean, it's like years move on because the work is so intense and it's continuous. But we joined a partnership so that all sickle cell organizations, not just national, but globally too, could participate in Juneteenth celebrations and then reach out to the general public so that we could educate about sickle cell and about blood donations and about the curatives for sickle cell.
What unique perspective does Doc Myers bring to this that you see it?
Okay, well, I mean, he brings a wealth of information. I mean, I just love this man. I wish I could clone him. But we work great as team members because, first of all, he's a medical doctor. Second of all, he's a minister. And then third of all, because he works with, he has sickle cell patients that he works with. And he's a great grassroots advocate. You know, I mean, he keeps his pace on the thumb. He is so interesting. Plus, he knows about pain patients. And then he joined us together, or me together with the pain patient community. I mean, his work has been extensive for the past 30 years. I am in awe of this man, and he's dedicating his life to help others. And I just have to join him, so we're a great team along with others because I've done that for sickle cell. He's done that for just not himself, but others, so many others.
Late April, they're going to be having a rally. Are you guys, as the World Sickle Cell Federation, going to be a part of that? Are you going to be rallying?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Thank you. Yes, we are honored and fortunate to, and this is my first time doing that. I've always represented sickle cell. I go by myself and go up to Sacramento. I went to Washington, D.C. once, but we participated in something that was a little different. Mm-hmm. But my issue with sickle cell is to let the United States of America and the world know the state of sickle cell, nationally and globally. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I'm honored to be one of the speakers for the congressional briefing and represent sickle cell.
Okay, great.
So I'll be there. I'm going to be all 3 days, and we're going to have some marches, and we'll be talking to, and it's just to make sure people really know the truth, because people hem and hum and tiptoe around the truth about sickle cell, and that's killing people. Yes. This opioid issue is killing people, because the difference with pain patients and sickle cell patients is that when the sickle cell patient is in pain, it can be deadly.
Right.
The pain means something's really going on, and they can die at a moment's notice. Right. Like when they say, oh, this pain is in my head, and the doctors don't even want to see if it's a stroke, and then the person has a stroke and die, or they have a heart attack and die. You know what I mean? They just go sit down somewhere, and they die. That shouldn't be, because these people are somebody's daughter, son, husband, wife, a child, grandchild, mother. And we have so many challenges just in working. Right. That's what I want to let these people know. People can't keep a job because they have to be in the hospital sometimes, and the employer won't hold the job for them. Mm. So then they have to go on and be on welfare. Then people want to talk about them being on welfare. Welfare is not enough money to help them,
to live on their own.
To live their best life. Right. Yeah. And don't let them have children.
Right.
Yeah. They need advocates.
Yes, I wanted to go into that in a little bit. Do you guys do blood drives at all? And if so, what do you do? Because I know that will help, right?
Yes. So thank you for that question. So I work with some organizations that put on blood drives. And what I do is I register the marrow when they're putting on the blood drives. But this is why it's so important to donate blood, and this is for all people who are healthy, and we need y'all to be healthy out there, so please be healthy, because you never know when a person will need a blood transfusion. But for our people diagnosed with sickle cell, who are basically, they want to say about 90%, I don't really know the statistics because everybody's not counted, but I do know that those diagnosed with sickle cell who are African American need African American blood, because about 51% of African Americans / black people / Moors have negative CEK blood, and it's some of the proteins in the blood. Now, those are the antigens. And the antigens, we have all sorts of kind of antigens, but those specifically are better for those diagnosed with sickle cell who have to be on either chronic transfusion therapy or blood transfusion therapy. And what that is, and I'll give you an example. One of the children, about 5 years old, to prevent them from having a stroke, because they did this test, the transcranial Doppler, and they looked in the brain, they had a test, and they saw that their blood vessels were really, really small. Now, those children who have really, really small blood vessels are at risk to have a stroke. So they started them on transfusion therapy, and they were getting, say, 5 years old. You can get transfused once a month with, say, 1 unit of blood. So as the child grows, the child will need more blood transfusions. So then it goes to like 1 unit every 2 weeks, then 1 unit every month. Excuse me, not every month, but every week. Okay. Then it can go to 2 units or more every week. And it's just crazy how it goes to people. Now, the thing about blood donors is we need people to be blood buddies or donor buddies. And that is a tag team group of 4 to 6 people that only donate blood to this one person. And that way, that person won't get so many antibodies. And the antibodies are like, they fight off the cooties. And I know some people say there's no such thing as cuties. But say if, like, I had the flu, you had the mumps, someone else had the measles, somebody else had something else.
Right.
Now, we build up antibodies to fight those demons off, so, we live through it.
Right.
But if people get blood from a different person every single time, they build up all of these boxing antibodies, and sooner or later, the new blood that's transfused, all of the antibodies get together and they say, hey, what is this? Right. Attack! And they go beat up that blood, and that blood transfusion doesn't work. And that is about rejecting. So the other thing, though, is that it can reject it that way, or it can reject it if it's not same race blood. Because of the proteins. They don't match, or they don't blend with the person. So that's why we say we need everybody to donate blood if you're healthy, even so much as they started blue tagging blood for the Red Cross. The only thing is they don't do it nationally.
What is
but Blue Cross, blue tag blood is when they will identify the donor as an African American. Okay. If they do that, then they can send it out when needed, and they only type. They don't do all of the processing. But if they say, like, you have A blood, B blood, or RH factor, or O, they'll send it out that way. But if they realize that it's African American, if they send it, it can be processed and matched by that negative CEK blood. So that's why they do that. Okay. But we have to understand that this is nothing. It's not being racist, or it's not being anything negative. It's the just the truth.
Right. That's just what it is. Can stem cells help out at all?
Okay, great question. Stem cells, cord blood, bone marrow, and then we're talking about either the adult stem cells or the cord blood stem cells. Those are considered curatives. So, and that's the thing about what we do is educate about these factors. And I challenge and I beg, I ask other organizations, all of the sickle cell organizations, if we would include this when we're out there and drive. All of the healthcare organizations, because we need to educate the public about these factors. First of all, people who are 18 through 44, if they would register their bone marrow as be a bone marrow donor, it would either be a bone marrow donor or a stem cell. So it's done one of two ways. Either the stem cells is just like donating blood, exactly like donating platelets, where they filter out and they keep what they need. Right. So instead of the blood platelets, they'll keep the stem cells and give you back your other blood fluids, your white blood cells and your red blood cells, because all they want are the stem cells. Give you back your plasma, all of that stuff. Or if they need the bone marrow, they would take it out of your hip. It's never been the spine, never will be the spine. It's out of the hip, so you have to be healthy enough. You can't have too much fat in that hip booty area, but because you need the needle to get there to the bone and extract it. So people don't die from that, the donors. It's uncomfortable. Some people, if you're one of these people that pain is a big thing you experience, but for me, it's like, take my blood, I don't care, just stick the needle in, I'll be a good test patient for you guys practicing, because it's just, I know what you do, it doesn't hurt me.
Right.
My mind is such as I have to help somebody else.
Right.
Yeah, so it's all good. You won't die from it. Now, that, though, it's about 25% of the time that they want the bone marrow, about 75% of the time that they want the adult stem cells that donors give. Now, 18 through 44 make up about 90% of the matches for people already on the registry. So that's cool, but we still need more people to register to donate. Now, here's the deal.
Where can you register to donate?
45 through 60. Okay, you can go to bethematch.org.
Okay.
But those they will kind of tell people 45 through 60 because they kick us off our 61st birthday. Oh, we don't really want you. Yeah, they want you, but they're going to ask you to pay for the process. We never know who will match, but they're going to ask you to pay about $150 as it was for the testing. Now, here's the thing, though. When it comes to the baby's umbilical cord blood stem cells, those are actually a better match because they're younger.
Right.
See, the reason they kick us off at 61st birthday is because we got old stem cells revamping this older bone marrow. So they're looking for the younger. Also, it can match more people. And there are free cord blood banks all across the nation and then globally as well. Okay. So I was very honored to go to the International Cord Blood Stem Cell Program for years, and I learned all that I could so I could bring it back. But those stem cells can not only cure sickle cell, but cancers, leukemia. They were looking at it for diabetes. We're looking at it for other diseases, and it has cured AIDS.
Right. Yes, AIDS. Absolutely.
Yeah.
When we were talking last, you mentioned something about medical manslaughter and overdosing purposely. Can you go into that a little bit?
Okay. Well, we have our own full definition for it, but it came out of the fact that we've got too many people that don't listen in the medical industry. They think it's all about them and what little or what majorly they're talked about. But these people may be doctors, they may be knowledgeable, they may be familiar, but they're practicing. They're far from experts. And unfortunately, when you go to a hospital, you meet hospitalists who really don't have that much education. I'm going to be clear with it.
Okay.
And because they're arrogant, because they don't listen, they think they know everything, because they figure that if you know what you're talking about, you must be a druggie when you're talking about medicine. They don't listen. And when they don't listen to somebody who's 35 years old who's been dealing with this all of their lives, and they learn from listening to their parents and the doctors, and the doctors will teach them. The pediatric doctors teach the patients what they need to know so that they can live their best life.
Right.
But when they age out of pediatric medicine and they go into adult, the adults do a flip and say, oh, you know more than me? Oh, you must be trying to get over on me, so I'm not going to accept it.
Right.
So these new people coming out of college or whatever, they've been told that, oh, sickle cell patients, all they want to do is abuse drugs. They don't give them nothing. They're arrogant. They don't listen. And what they're doing is they won't even contact the person's regular doctor. They say, hey, no, even if they're in, like, say, we had Kaiser to Kaiser issue. This one doctor would not even consider his peer when it came to treating the patient. So the patient had to travel miles to come to Los Angeles when they lived out in San Diego, something like that. Crazy distances. And that's what people are doing nationally because of the ignorance of some doctors.
Right.
And then the older doctors who know more, who have been around, who've seen it, who learned it, who treat it, they're more the experts because they were interested. But these doctors are killing people.
Yeah.
And they're killing people, but we can't call it murder. We call it medical manslaughter because they do it with the medical degrees and with the medical board behind them saying, oh, we can't make the doctors do anything. They do what they want to do. All we do is license them.
Right.
Well, where are you going to license murderers, the people who don't listen?
Right.
So that's why we came up with medical manslaughter.
Are there specialized treatment centers? Are there specialized treatment centers in the United States for sickle cell patients?
Well, just like the organizations, there were more back in the day.
Okay.
When Nixon first apologized to the sickle cell community for not doing more and for, the United States not doing more and ignoring them, we had a far more. Right now, we have about 7. The last time I heard it was 7. It's 2 on the West Coast, and the rest on the East Coast, or east of the Mississippi River.
Wow. And
the other 2 are west of it.
How many people in the United States right now currently have sickle cell?
Well, it's known that about 100,000 have sickle cell disease, one form of it. But they're far more because they've never been counted, because people are constantly coming to our country and being born, and some are being born at the house without going to the hospital, and they're not being tested for newborn screening. There are people coming to America that are actually diagnosed with it and don't know it.
You think that they would have more centers then, wouldn't they? I mean, how can they treat that amount of people without little centers all over?
Exactly. Like, who's going to live in all of those places?
Right.
Yeah, because with most of them being back east, shucks, as cold as it is, and that's one of the things that works against sickle cell, cold, because it constricts the body. It makes the body tense up, and when it tenses up, those blood vessels get smaller, and the sickle cells flowing through, it gives them a chance to get caught up. We have 2, ones in Oakland out here, and then the other one is here in Los Angeles, the centers. But no, there's no kind of way that they can treat all of them. The most they can do, and that's the cool thing if the doctors only would participate, there's we have a concept, and it's like the wagon wheel concept. And it's the concept as the center of the spoke is one of the experts, and a specialist is not necessarily an expert. They just specialize in something. But when you have an expert that knows about sickle cell, then you have the spokes that come out. So say if you have a 7 spokes, and then it's attached to that wheel. Well, just think if those 7 doctors, when they meet up with the sickle cell patient, that they would call, email, make contact with that expert on how to treat that patient. Because the thing is, although there are 100,000 people or more diagnosed with sickle cell, it's still considered a rare disease. So some doctors will never, ever meet a patient diagnosed with sickle cell. And it is so that I met 2 people in Nebraska over the internet. One's in Omaha and one is in Lincoln. And they can't find a doctor that will listen and understand them. One is a grandmother that has a grandbaby, and then another lady is about 38 years old. And I'm like, what? First of all, what you guys doing up there? It's 2 days on cold, you know. But just the same, you have no idea where you go and where you settle. Especially as a child, you go where your mama and daddy tell you to go and move, you know. So it's just crazy. But they say they have the hardest time, not only with the doctors, but with the school, because these children miss a lot of school. These are children through adults who are going to college. They miss a lot of school sometimes. And the teachers want to make them do everything. You know, you got to, you know, make up all of this. And the things that I have heard, things that I have seen, they're absolutely crazy. We had teachers walk out of IEPs, and those are federal protection programs for children with disabilities. And these teachers say, I'm not going to change my program for you. I'll see to it that your child fails. And they make good on that. And then the school district said, hey, well, your child shouldn't have been out so much. We've even had parents arrested for their children being out so much.
We have a question from the audience. They want to know, do you think there should be national testing starting when a child first enrolls in school? Would that help in preventative care in any way possible?
Well, they do now for newborn screening, but it's for the parents, because some of the parents don't know that they have sickle cell trait or the disease. It would be good if what we call is it's something that one of our groups came out with. Are you having sickle sex? Are you do you have the trait, and does your partner have the trait? I would really love that before somebody actually got married, or at some point, maybe when they got their driver's license. But here's the thing. You do that, depending on who gets the information, it can be used to discriminate against you. And that's the thing. Here's a quick story about Miles Davis. Everybody should know Miles Davis, a great jazz trumpeter. He was diagnosed with sickle cell. They didn't even include that in the movie.
Yeah. I didn't know he had that.
Yeah, he had it, and as a matter of fact, all right, so this is a little of the information that I received. Okay. So I have to pass it on. That he had his first stroke when he was around 21 years old. So when he came back from the stroke, his music changed differently. But what happened, the story is, when the promoter and when his manager told him that you have to play or we're going to sue you for the money we would have made because you won't play because of sickle cell.
Right.
So, or we're going to blacklist you so you can't play in the Americas at all. We're going to make it so you can't play if you don't make us this money. So he said, okay, you know, I got to play, I'll play. But Miles also had the reputation, at least they thought he was arrogant because he would play with his back to the audience.
Okay. And why did he
If he had to play, because he was in sickle cell pain. He was in a sickle cell pain crisis. So there were times that he would play bent over, and there were times that he played with his back to the audience and bent over. And that's because he was in a pain crisis, and they didn't give a care about him and his illness. He died from complications due to sickle cell. And it was a shame they didn't mention that in the movie.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know,
it would have been, a really great way to be able to spread awareness on it.
Yes, because they were talking about he was a druggie, he did heroin.
Right.
Well,
if you
were experiencing pain, why wouldn't you take something for a pain reliever?
Right. Right.
You take whatever you can. At that time, one of my friends was telling me, he lived out here, we actually graduated together, and he told me that his doctors told his mother to give him aspirin. Excruciating pain, but you take aspirin? Come on now.
So even back then, they were having problems with getting medication. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
You mentioned something when I spoke to you last about, Donald Trump's making America great again. How do we make America great again, in your opinion?
How we make America great again is to allow all Americans to do their best. Don't limit people on what they can do. We have all right, let me put it like this. And we can do better. During slavery times and times after that, so many people had ideas. Ideas that were stolen by other people that had the money. Why not collaborate? Because there are so many ideas out here that can help America and help others. We can build up better than we were before using new dynamics. But one of the first things we really have to do to become a great country is to recognize and to fix what's broken. And some of the things are race relations. Some of the things are, just because it doesn't concern me, I don't care about it. We got to care about each other. And one of the things that we can do is to help people live their best lives. And that includes the pain patients. That includes all patients. That includes not dealing with the race you have, but the brain, the intelligence, and the hard work that you have, and can add to making America great again. We can really be. We have so many concepts and ideas that we can sell to other countries that they don't have a clue as to what to do, because we are all Americans.
Right.
We are all living on America's land. And, it makes no difference what ethnicity you are. But we're here working together, and that's the real thing. Let's work together, do our best, not be inhibited, not be divided by something as small as race, because if we peel off the skin, we're all the same color.
Right. Right. Well, at the end of the day here, just wanting to have the best quality of life that we can have. So I get that. Nita, Is there any, if people want to learn more about the World Sickle Cell Federation, how can they get a hold of you, or how can they find more information on that? And was there any other links or information that you wanted to get out there to our audience?
Okay, well, they can always visit your website because you have it all. But also, they can email me at any time at W for World, S for Sickle, C for Cell, Federation at gmail.com.
Okay, great.
There's so much going on.
Oh, I know. And when is the rally? In April?
Okay, it's the 25th.
25th of April.
April 25th.
And this is
in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I had the room number, but I don't have it on me. But I'll make sure I posted on my website. We just got the room number verification.
Okay.
But we're ready, and we're also going to have a march, and we're going to be at the Department of Justice also, so you can see the whole calendar, because it's going to take us all to come together to make change. It's not fair. It's like, you think about it's extermination to get rid of some people. You never know who anybody is.
Well, it's a genocide.
It
seems.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Old people with pain, and black people with sickle cell, and other people with sickle cell because they don't know that sickle cell is in every race.
You're right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and thank you just for sharing all this education. And was there anything else that you wanted to hit on before we get going here?
No, just to say, I think we all need just to be a little bit kinder and a little bit more understanding of where people are coming from. And if you really put your shoes or your feet in someone else's shoes, then you can begin to understand and not just accept somebody's opinion. You learn from people, and we're in this thing together.
I agree.
And I thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And those are very wise words. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us this evening, Con Nation. Don't forget, next Tuesday, to call in with questions at 7/6 Central on The Doctor's Corner with Dr. Klein. Also, next Tuesday, March 21st, 8/7 Central, Dr. Michael Chapman will be a guest on Con Nation. Have a good evening.
Listening to Conspiracies Against Wellness with your host, Janelle Elgaway. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers, and not necessarily those of EXG LLC, its employees, or sponsors. Copyright 2018 by EXG LLC. All rights reserved.